Okay, linear equations, working on section 2.8. And for linear equations, the two forms that we've learned and that we've been talking about and reviewing have been slope-intercept form and point-slope form. So in either form, there's one thing that those titles have in common. They both say slope. Slope is one of the most important pieces of information you have when you're dealing with linear equations. All linear equations have slope. All lines have slope. So slope is extremely important. And when we're trying to find slope, sometimes you have a graph, and you can see the graph, you can see your line, you can see the 2 points anywhere on that line, and you can just count rise over run to know what your slope is. Or sometimes people don't want to think rise over run. Sometimes they have a word problem, or they see a table, or they just look at their points and they just think, well, rise is the vertical change, which is where my y-axis is, so it's the change in y. And then they think, well, run, that's my horizontal change on my graph, or the change where my x-axis is, so that's the change in my x, or change in my x values. And maybe you're just given two different points, and from those 2 points you have to calculate the slope. So you use slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. But in order to write an equation of a line, you have to have slope. So for slope-intercept form, slope we write with a lowercase m. Y-intercept, we can show the y value of the y-intercept with a lowercase b. When you think m and b, you should think y equals mx plus b. That equation of a line in slope-intercept form. M is your slope. And B is the y value of the y-intercept. And the reason I'm saying B is just the y value of the y-intercept, and I'm not just saying B is the y-intercept, is because your y-intercept, it's not a single number, it is a point. So wherever your line crosses your y-axis, your y-intercept is that entire point. Parentheses around it, comma in between. The x value on your y-axis is always 0, and whatever the y value is on the y-axis where your line crosses, that's our B, whatever that number is. So if I cross my y-axis where I see the number 5, my point for the y-intercept is 0, 5, and my B is a 5. And that's the most common equation that we see, the one that's the simplest for us to write or the simplest for us to graph. But sometimes I don't know what the y-intercept is. I don't see it on a graph and I wasn't told what it is, and you cannot start in that form. Sometimes you're given some other point, some other x and y value that we can call x1, y1, and you know or you find what the slope is, our m. And so when you see that, you should think y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So in order to write an equation in point-slope form, you only need two things. Just like in slope-intercept, you need two things. For point-slope, you need to know the point, the x1 and the y1 value. You might know multiple points, but you just need to pick one that's on the line. And then you also have to know m, or your slope. Okay, and what we're going to do next is we're going to do an example problem where I give you 2 points. You have to use those 2 points to write the equation of the line, and you're going to use all of this information and pull it all together to do that. So here's what your problem might look like. Write the equation of the line in slope intercept form. That goes through the points -2, 5 and -4, 9. No, you don't.
You want us to write that?
Okay, so as you're looking at that, I want an equation in slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept, MB. I don't know my slope. I don't know my y-intercept. As it is right now with the information I'm given, I cannot write it in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to have to find some information or rearrange some equations to get it into slope-intercept form. And one of the things I'm going to have is the slope. And I do know how to find the slope from 2 points using slope formula right here. So that's what we're going to start is step 1. We're going to find slope. And we're going to do it using slope formula. Yeah, Corbin. When we finish this, yeah. As long as you haven't signed out, yes. Okay, ready? You get a jump start on me. You try it first. You don't need me to do it for you. You know how to do slope formula. Go. Find it. So you try that first, and then we'll check it. Work it out from here. You got it. All right, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So subtracting my y's, I have 9 minus 5. And this is the one I want to make sure we didn't leave a negative off on. X2 minus x1, -4 minus -2. So you are going to have a double negative. And remember that means that that's a positive. You need to change that to a positive before you continue to work it out. So from that point, 9 minus 5 should have given you 4. -4 plus 2 is -2. And when you divide 4 by -2, you get -2. And so now you have your slope. And you have to have your slope to do either one of these forms. So we have that. But the other thing you need to do in to write an equation in slope-intercept form is to know what the y-intercept is. I still don't know the y-intercept. And I'm not going to be able to just figure it out by just thinking about it. I'm not actually going to be able to start in slope-intercept form because I don't have enough information, even though that's what I want my final answer in. And that's okay. I can always start in one form and rearrange it into the other. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start with point slope form because I do have points to choose from and I do now know my slope. So that's our step 2. So write point slope form if you don't know the y-intercept, and we don't. If I did know the y-intercept, I could just write y equals mx plus b and be done. But I don't know the y-intercept, so I have to write it in this form here. So y minus y1. It doesn't matter which point I choose, I gotta pick one. I would say either pick the one with the least amount of negatives, and they're both the same there, or I would say pick the one with the smallest numbers to make it easier on you. So that'd be the first one. But either point you pick, you will still get the right answer when you're finished. So I'll go with this one. Y minus 5 equals m, my slope, which we just found to be -2, times x minus my x value, which for that point that I chose is again -2. If you have a double negative, make that a positive first. Then I can't add 5 to both sides because I have something in parentheses here. I need to distribute that -2 through my parentheses first. So I still have y minus 5 equals -2 times x, which is -2x, and -2 times +2, which is -4. And after that step, I can add 5 to both sides. So I get y equals -2x plus 1. And that is my step 3, slope-intercept form. So start in point slope if you have to, and just rearrange it into slope-intercept form if that's what you need. If I was actually given a y-intercept to begin with, I could have just gone straight into slope-intercept form, but I wasn't.